You ready?
Yeah, I'll just keep signing them.
Yeah, I can pass them down the line.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the meeting of the Scituate Board of Health, Monday, June 1st, 2015, in the Selectmen's Chambers Town Hall, 7 p.m.
Make a motion to accept the agenda?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Might as well jump right into it. Are we ready for 61 Border Street? Kenny, Title V compliance?
Yes, sir.
Hey, don't come on up and sit down, please.
I got whacked in traffic coming down from Boston, I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks. My name is Michael Kenny. My wife Kristen and I built a house on 61 Border Street. I've been a builder for 30 years, and I've been involved in the wastewater treatment business. I built and hold patents on a couple of large systems, but I really screwed this situation up. Kristen and I appeared before the board a few months ago in reference to Joe Bonomi's refusal to sign off on the certificate of completion for septic repair. We had to bring this issue before you, and we appreciated its resolution. We installed this Perkrite system in September. I hired Rick Murray to do the job after having to fire Bonomi for screwing up the site work on the project. We later found the jet system, which was installed, to have been purposefully sabotaged, which we, repaired. Rick Murray checked the field and graded it for the Perkrite. It had been inspected and at the location adjusted previously by Jennifer Lamb and my engineer, Kevin Grady. According to the DEP approval letter, the Perkrite system was installed, as per the DEP approval letter, the Perkrite system was installed by Rob Sumerian, the manufacturer's distributor, Ken Olson, approved by Oakson as an installer, myself. I'd met Jen previously with Ralph, a consulting engineer, and she said that she wanted to see the system when it was built. I do not recall that, but I would not deny that she said that. I've apologized 3 times verbally and twice in writing. Sumerian tested the system and said I was good to backfill. Again, it sat for a couple of days while Kevin reviewed the system and prepared the as-built. I absolutely made a mistake, but in retrospect, why wouldn't I call? The pictures are enclosed. It's a functioning system, having been recently reviewed by Clear Water Recovery in the remediation of the item that was placed in a baffle in the jet system. I've tried to resolve this for 5 months. I would just appeal to the board, rather than ripping apart the entire system, could we contemplate working with Ralph, possibly uncovering the corners or any other areas? So Sumerian sat there, worked with myself, Ken Olson. Ken Olson has been approved, is an approved technician. I absolutely screwed up. I mean, I should have called Jen and had her, come in and look at it. Sumerian said you're okay to backfill, which in Carlisle, where I put in these other previous systems, has been okay. Rob Fredo, who's the health officer, does not have to come out because Sumerian has to certify that the system is installed correctly and running. And I would just really ask if there's a way that I don't have to, rip the entire system apart if that's possible. But it's absolutely my mistake. I'm not making any excuse about that.
Well, we appreciate that, first of all. Let me ask you a question. So this Robert Sumerian, He's obviously on record with the health agent in Carlisle, correct?
Yes.
That was one mistake right off the bat, is that Jen, I know, had asked you a few times to have Rob come in and do everything, and we didn't have any licensing or any.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, Rob Sumerian is he's an officer in Oakson Engineering, which owns the Perkwright franchise.
That's all fine in the end.
So we're talking about Rick Murray. I'm
If they still
sorry.
did the installation on it and did all the testing and whatever else it needed to be, she had no record of it, we have no record of it on file here. And he might be on record in Carlisle, hence the reason why he could just go and backfill it without having somebody come and supervise
Right.
it.
I understand that.
That's,
But I think we're talking about Rick Murray. So Rick Murray is the Title V installer who took over from Bonomi. He came in, graded the field, and prepped it for us to install the Perkwright system. Rob Sumerian, as of record, told me that he knows Jennifer. He's installed several Perkwright systems in the town previously.
I was just going to ask, what are your concerns with?
So I have two concerns, two very basic concerns. That one, the system wasn't inspected, as Mr. Kenny indicated, and that also that there was no licensed installer physically installing the system. So Rob Sumerian is the distributor for Oakson. He is not a licensed installer anywhere in the state. To the best of my knowledge, he has indicated himself that he is in fact the distributor. He does not physically install systems, according to a conversation I had with him in December. Rick Murray also came in December, indicated that he also did not in fact install the system, but that he backfilled the system, and as Michael Kenny said, regraded in preparation for the system to be installed. The last,
I'm sorry, where they both located? Where is Rick and Oakson's from that, right?
Oakson is,
In Gloucester.
they're in,
Gloucester?
yes, they're in
Where
Gloucester.
is Rick Murray?
He-
Duck there? It's the same Rick Murray, right? Duck there?
Yeah.
That's on, right?
Right, well, the Pembroke,
It's- yeah,
Right.
okay, yeah.
So
The problem is,
The other-
though, the system went in without a licensed
it
installer.
went out with a licensed installer. The other Perkwright systems that have been installed and witnessed by us have been installed by companies like Clearwater. So Rob Sumerian has been present overseeing those installations, but did not actually physically install them. A licensed installer in the town installed them. So, so my concern is twofold. We're being asked to sign off on a certificate of compliance for a system that we do not observe, that we do not see function, and we do not see the entire field. And then the other concern I have is that, all systems that go into Scituate need to have a licensed installer in the town. So those two basic tenets of Title V are in non-compliance, and this is a precedent-setting
That's the law.
concern.
It's the
That
law.
is the
That's
law.
the law.
when you read the certification for general use for the Perkwright system, it states, "The system owner shall not authorize or allow the installation of the system other than by a person certified by the company to install the system."
Right.
That's Perkwright, that's not town of Scituate, though.
Yes, sir, I understand.
No other state,
Huh?
no other state.
Right,
I'm sorry?
That's from their own sort of literature.
right.
I'm sorry, this is from,
That's from Perkwright, right?
no, this is from the certification letter, DEP certification letter.
Right, so DEP certified.
So, and I'm sorry, Jen, just let me finish. Prior to the commencement of construction, the system installer must certify in writing to the designer, the local approving authority, and the system owner that he is locally approved system installer and has been certified by the company qualified to install the system. Hence why, after the system was installed, you received the letter of certification from Rob Sumerian. And again, I mean, in retrospect, no doubt about it. I certainly, would have had Rick Murray come down. I almost view it as, to a degree, it's like JET. JET comes in, they install the tank, they certify that it's working, see you later. That's hooked up to, to the pump chamber for Perkwright. That's not so there are segments of the system, and again, I absolutely screwed up on the thing as far as that's concerned.
Is this the picture of your system in the,
Yes, prior to, which Rob took prior to, and again, it sat there for a couple of days. I would have gladly, had Jen come over and look at it. I just, did not understand the process correctly.
Well, I think, and I don't want to bring in another example because we want to focus on this, but the other property that was in question with the septic system was what number board?
147 border.
Okay, so the same premise held there that it needed to be signed off.
Correct.
And I think we sided with your argument that it needed to be signed off unless then that installer was going to have a problem.
Right.
And I think, you benefited by that application of that criteria that time. And now you're trying to get, now you're asking for it to be the...
No, sir. With all due respect, on 147 border, Bonomi performed a job. He was paid in full. He denied he was paid, and we had to come to you as the board.
Yeah, those are two separate issues. I just assume
Totally.
leave that alone. Leave that alone.
On this case, I have no licensed installer.
Yeah, I look at this picture, I see a broken pipe on here.
I'm sorry?
I see a pipe here that's not even connected in this picture.
Oh, the circle?
Right there.
Yeah, this is, in the process of testing. I mean, Sumerian certified it, but, and believe me, he fully tested it, and it's fully functioning. And I'm sorry, Mary then, when the Perkrite was completed, came in and backfilled, after Kevin Grady did the as-built, he came in and backfilled the system. So I would not, certainly, with the next system that I do, I would say, okay, Rick, you should come down here and observe, what we're doing. But, other than that, the way I've always done these systems is the licensed installer grades it, strips, digs the hole, backfills with sand, we put in the Perkrite, he backfills the system.
When you
I
say,
think the problem is, excuse me, 1 second,
Right.
is you didn't even include the town in that one.
Pardon me?
There's a huge gap, and you just said it right there, it's including the town.
Oh, the inspections, absolutely. And obviously, when we had the hole originally dug, you were involved, and I'm absolutely at fault as far as that's concerned. I just hate to rip this system up. It's.
You've been living at the house, correct?
Yes.
Is the system working, functioning?
Yes. We had a problem. Somebody took 1.5 inches of rubber insulation and put it in the baffle of the jet system. We had to take the system apart from the pipe coming out of the house, through the jet system, and Kevin Grady and I discovered this. Other than that, it's been working fine. And it's odd, I took a picture today, which I didn't have time to print. You can see the grass, things have been, pretty drought stricken. You can see the grass growing, in that area. Yeah.
Tree and rich area.
Right.
so my concern remains is that, there is no one to sign the certificate of compliance.
I think we're setting precedents by,
Oh.
Rick Murray specifically said to me in my office that he did not install the system. On other Perkrite systems that are installed in the town of Scituate, a licensed company such as the last one I witnessed was Clearwater Recovery, physically installed the system, overseen by Oakson. Typically it is Rob Sumerian. And, the homeowners don't self-install, Oakson doesn't install.
I'm not, a homeowner from that perspective. Jen Oakson, and Ken Olson is a certified technician by Oakson, did the work.
Well, but by that standard too, Mr. Kenny, then you'd even be held to a higher standard than if you're not just a happy homeowner.
Right.
I mean,
I-
did you get a rough electrical inspection on this?
Pardon me?
Did you get a rough electric?
I believe so, yeah.
Did you get a rough plumbing?
Yes. And it's, when you read their, approval letter, it says that the installation of their particular component of the system has to be done by a technician who's approved by Oakson.
And Title V indicates that the person installing the system.
Jen,
is to be
again,
licensed.
please, I'm just trying to see if, short of ripping the system apart, there's anything else that we can do.
I'm not seeing it.
I'm not seeing it either, I don't. sets a precedence that I don't even want to go down that road. It's,
Okay. No, that's fair enough. I can appreciate that.
so many systems installed in town, and this is the first time I've seen this.
I'm sorry?
I said, this is the first time I've seen this, and it's tough to go back on that.
Yeah, no, I've made my case. That's the way it rolls, we'll rip it out and reinstall it.
Is there a, well, if the fella can go over it slow and get it up without totally ripping it up, but is there a vote on this we have to take?
No, it's an informal discussion. Don't bother yourselves with it. I appreciate you listening to me. You don't have to go any
Well,
further.
Jim, do you want to vote on it? Do you want us to vote on it?
I would prefer a formal decision since I'm.
I would prefer not to have a formal, we've had the discussion, we're all set and resolved. No need.
It is a
No,
formal
because
discussion.
it's a
Okay.
non-compliant system, and this board's got to act.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. No, I just didn't want to inconvenience you any further, that's all.
So, no convenience way here.
Right.
No, it's what we volunteered to do.
Sure.
And, I don't know, we received a vote that the system
It's not in compliance with Title
is not in
V.
compliance, it needs to be exposed.
It needs to be, it's not in compliance with Title V, it needs to be brought, if it's going to be inhabited, it needs to be brought up to this.
So do you need to get a licensed installer to look at this when it's
Rick will do
exposed?
it. Rick will have no problem with that.
And recertify it?
Rick is not a licensed installer in town. We need to have a licensed installer from the.
He said that he paid his license fee when he came in and signed for the system originally. Is that not correct?
If he's a licensed installer, or if he isn't, he can get his license in Scituate as long as he follows the test and the guidelines and
Yep.
pays his licensing fee. So if you want to
And
use
it's
Mr. Mary,
annual.
there's,
It's annual, so
Yeah.
if he wants to.
He paid the fee, and I reimbursed him for doing so.
For 2014.
Okay.
He's not a licensed installer in the town of Scituate currently.
Okay,
the 250.
that's different.
So he can come in and pay the
Sure.
license. Yeah,
No
yeah,
problem.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Do you want to make a motion then?
Yeah, sure. Make a motion to 61 Water Street for a non-compliant septic system, which Mr. Kenny has to go ahead and re-earth and have a licensed inspector go over it before she can issue her compliance certificate.
Okay.
With the town too, I want you to go down or a representative to look at it, as Title V says, in town of Scituate.
It is the law.
Oh, please,
It is the law. I mean, it's.
now I'm with you. I figured before I rip it up, I'd come in and have a chat with you, that's all.
What's that?
Do you want anything else added to that?
No.
Okay,
I think
then I'll
that-
second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Item number 2, discuss, review private well regulations, comments, and recommended revisions from town departments and boards. Yeah, well,
My name is Martha Cook, and I'm with the Water Resources Committee, and we're here because we're interested in the private wells, specifically some of the numbers in the regulations where they might have to do with underground irrigation systems.
okay.
So if you want to go ahead and discuss.
Underground, meaning just irrigation as opposed to potable.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, we can,
Or do you want to address their concerns and then, I mean, is it just specifically that? Not potable wells, just irrigation?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
We'll want to tell us about some of your
Do
concerns.
you want to do it backwards and start at the irrigation section, work your way through? I think what you have in front of you is the same thing I have, is that, to be perfectly honest, I'm new on this particular document. John Clarkson is at a wedding, and Becky, who is also more familiar with this, wasn't able to attend. So Shirley and I are here. There are quite a few changes that John put in, partly just from his personal experience and expertise. What we're hoping for in general is that we don't think that irrigation systems should be hooked up to private wells, but again, if they are, because there are already quite a few existing, we'd rather not have any new ones, but again, if they do, we'd really just like to see those irrigation systems follow the same rules that anybody else uses when it comes to watering flowers, vegetables, grass, etc. Because essentially it's all the same water, so that the drinking water in town that is underground belongs to everybody. And we're just hoping to make it fair and equal, so that if on a street of 10 houses, 5 people are on town water and 5 people have private wells, 5 people who have town water are going to be prohibited from watering their grass and their vegetables and everything else, except certain hours in the morning, certain hours in the evening. And we have, as a town, the right to say to them, it hasn't rained in the month of May, we're losing water in the reservoir, and so we're asking everybody not to water. A private well owner, those other 5 people on the street can keep watering and watering and watering, which reduces everybody's water.
Do you know of any other town that does that?
Actually, several do, yes.
Which,
Yeah, I think it's in here in some of these notes that John sent you, but I also have that, for instance, we're in the North-South River Watershed Association, and there are other towns just immediately around here, as well as other towns in like the Neponset River Watershed Association in Greater Boston. There are some towns that don't let people use private irrigation, underground irrigation to come from a private well at all. Period, which is not allowed.
And the towns that do they just do it in zone 2, or do they do it throughout the whole town?
That I couldn't tell you, I don't know.
Because that would be a big distinction.
Exactly. I think
Point.
the bigger concern is obviously if I have a home with a private well and I live right near the reservoir or right near one of the town wells, and we've got, over a dozen town wells, if you're one of those homes close to that, again, it's the same underground body of water that's being reduced. So when the general aquifer is being stressed environmentally and everybody's suffering, we would just like to ask for there to be a sense of fairness, so which I realize we're going to take some heat from. I certainly have friends who have private wells and have gorgeous gardens and yards, and it's, their pride and joy. But it does all, I think, what did you say? All comes from the same Coke can?
No, I didn't say that.
Was that you? That was a different select person, excuse me, who said,
can I interrupt for a second?
we're all sucking out of the
So
same
Sean,
Coke can.
I know John went to the meeting the other night when you guys were talking about the water table. What is the consensus opinion? I haven't had a chance.
On this, we didn't discuss this part of it.
Oh, you did not?
No, not this part. What we discussed were
Implementing regulations though, right?
expanding on the current regs, okay? And, correct me if I'm mistaken, we went from Memorial Day to Labor Day,
Mhm,
from May 1 to September 30th,
mhm,
with the same rules,
right.
all right? Even, odd, Thursdays, things like that. Then, the next thing we did was, when the reservoir gets to a level that is a little bit higher than it had been in the past,
Right. Mhm.
automatic, from.
Total
the-
restriction.
Yes, right, so it's just,
Right.
so we bumped that up, a little more insurance.
Mhm.
And the last one was the third one,
Well,
to do with no more irrigation.
right, no
No
more,
new.
no new irrigation systems being attached to town drinking water, any
Right.
town water supply. And again, frankly, if it were up to me, I'd say they should be able to drill wells, because we realize we're putting a new home builder in a tough spot. We're
Sure.
saying you can't put in an irrigation system on our town drinking water. If you want one, you either need to get a cistern, do rainwater, dig your own well. But again, that also stresses hydrologically the whole system. If we've got 40 new people putting in underground irrigation systems and wells, because again, that's taking away from the water we need for health and
Carry that to the
safety.
extreme if everybody on town water decided to drop their own well for potable purposes.
Right. What we think might happen is that you'll be people who are going to have their town water for their drinking water, and they're going to put in a well just for irrigation. And if it, say you have a subdivision with 100 homes, if 75 of those homes do it, that takes away from the water that everybody drinks and uses for health and safety.
I have a question. I'm gonna go down a road I don't know much about. It's a science. I mean, has there been a hydrogeologist that's actually done the test and gone down 300, 400, 500 feet to see how the aquifer in the water table is?
Here specifically or in general?
Well, in general.
In
I mean,
general,
let's say
yes.
the south coast of Massachusetts, the
Yeah.
South Shore here.
In general, the North-South River Watershed Association has given us a lot of background, and they've published quite a few reports. They also rely again on the DEP and other places like that to find out. Again, I'm not a scientist either, but they have graphs, and they can show you that in general, less rain in the summer, higher demand in the summer, and that's a pretty clear and consistent statistic, particularly in communities like ours where you get an extra 500 to 5,000 residents depending on the town.
Sure.
And that underground water source is also going down and down and down and down. So I think ideally, like I said, we would
Well, how much
say,
of the irrigation that gets spread then goes right back down?
a lot of it's actually lost to evaporation. And part of the problem too with the irrigation systems is that, again, ideally, they'll have a rain sensor or a moisture control sensor. A lot of people don't bother to put that extra add-on on. You'll have people like today where it was pouring and you see somebody's underground sprinkler going.
Because they don't have the sensor.
And they didn't bother to go turn it off, even though they heard the weather forecast. So if you have an underground irrigation system hooked up to your own personal well, we would just like to say, you know, could you please abide by the same rules everybody else does? If I'm only allowed to water with my handheld hose on the day of my voting precinct, and my neighbor across the street's got a well, I would just like to see them also only be able to use that. Because right now, if you've got a well attached to your irrigation system, you could conceivably water every day. And it just doesn't seem balanced and fair when we're all trying to drink from the same water, use it to fight all the same fires at any home.
Do the golf courses, what do they do?
Golf courses are generally exempt from this kind of thing. Typically, they do have wells. As far as the state regs go, any agricultural or business concern, commercial concern, for instance, we had a gentleman last year who owns one of the greenhouse setups, the gardening centers, and a customer went in and gave him holy hell for watering. And he came and said, I thought I was allowed. Well, he is allowed, because it's his livelihood. And he also has one of the most efficient systems you've seen. They are generally so much more aware of the better technology about using drips and not doing it at noon on a windy day. You know, they're actually pretty good. And luckily, we don't have any car washes in town. Again, some of the regs that are town by town, not by the state, are no filling your pool, no washing your car, no commercial car washes.
We actually have some of that, or we entertain.
Some of that language is
Yeah.
in our thing too. I mean, we used to have the one on the Driftway, it's not there anymore, so that's not our
Dunkin'
problem.
Donuts. John, you had a question?
I was just gonna chime in. One thing that helped me, along what you were saying, vote in favor of the regulations, and something that kind of hit home to me was when they're the experts telling us that watering your lawn like once a week is really all you need, and by over-watering it can make the grass, the roots come up, and it's fine just once a week. So that's what, you know, some of us struggled with the idea of telling people what they can do on their own property.
Well, how about a geothermal heating system? Right, you're sucking up the water and then
You're returning it though.
You're
But
returning
it circulates
Right.
with one of those.
You're just reaching.
No, I'm just trying to, see your
Yes.
point about restricting use of property, just, I just want to make sure we're.
I do have an
But
answer here
legally,
that
though,
I,
when you have a parcel of property, you own all the way down, you own certain water rights.
I don't
You brought
think the
up a
state
point
law-
about zones,
Yeah.
so the state's dictating certain zones. It just, I understand your points
Right.
wholeheartedly, but
I don't think the state law upholds that. I'm not 100% sure. We could check with the town council.
Title V regulations, there's certain things that can and can't be done,
Right.
certain zones.
Right.
I'm sure too, if you're pulling off the same aquifer, there's definitely something there. If
Exactly.
one person's being regulated and someone's not because they have a private well for irrigation, understood. But what happens if they're not in that zone? You know, is it within the right?
So I did find one of the answers that you asked for, if I could backtrack a second, in the notes I brought with me. The communities of Falmouth and Middleton have both implemented bylaws extending water use regulations, which originally applied only to public water customers, to cover private well users. Both of those bylaws have been upheld by the Attorney General of the state. The Falmouth bylaw extends any ban on water use instituted when the selectmen declare a water emergency. It's considered an overall groundwater emergency to all private well users on the basis of the protection of public health and safety.
Well, that makes
I apologize,
sense.
I only have one copy.
And that I would definitely have no problem with it, it makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants an irrigation well, and we have the regulations for it, but if there is a state of an emergency, of course,
Right,
that would shut everybody down.
right. So I guess our preferences is,
But if we have a
Your
regular
language-
season with regular rainfall and everything else,
right,
then if somebody wants to have an irrigation well, then, I'm kind of wrestling that in my mind. why
yeah, we would
why
just like
stop
them
that.
to be as tight as possible. Thank you. Again, mostly because we're looking at the building permits that are coming through and the potential for future development that by having passed this law that says no irrigation.
No new irrigation
No
wells.
new irrigation is going to be
Irrigation
hooked to town drinking water. Nothing. So
No,
when I,
maybe my definitions are off here. What does that exactly mean? I'm not following.
so say I build my beautiful new home and
Right.
I love grass and gardening and I want an irrigation system.
What do you mean by irrigation system? Give me irrigation
Pipes under the grass with the sprinkler heads that pop up and
fed by
automatically.
an irrigation well.
From now on,
Right out.
From now on, the law is it will not come from town water. If I choose to put in a cistern, collect rainwater, gray water from my house, taking any other source, I can.
Yeah.
We know that realistically, most people are not going to be savvy enough technically or confident enough in those new systems. So they're going to say, my next best thing is digging a well. And it's also a price point consideration. Digging a well is several $1,000s. Putting in a cistern or a gray water system is several $1,000s. So it's going to be a question of, again, who, like the previous gentleman, who's local, who has the time, who has the technology and the ability. Those other systems are still, I think, somewhat new enough that you're not going to find a lot of qualified people to come in and say, because it's in the news right now about California, everybody's in gray water, everybody's getting rid of their landscaping. It's, in general, we'd like to see the new person coming in, building the beautiful home, choose not to have a huge yard and plantings. Again, personally, I love flowers and vegetables and everything else, but I don't have a huge yard either. And I am really water conscious, and I've got 6 rain barrels. So that's what we would hope we could steer people toward. And we know that we can't force people to do that, but we would like them to just not essentially overshare the drinking water that should be for the safety and health of everybody else. So,
So as far as the irrigation
But you're
thing-
back to the zone, I mean, if you're not in zone 1, I know it's the same aquifer, but it's not drinking, it's if you're not in,
right, most of these regulations are anybody whose home is near any well, any reservoir, any
Why
underground.
Middleton, though? I'm curious why Middleton and the North Shore of the middle of nowhere, they're not in there any water. I'm curious. Falmouth I can understand, but Middleton I cannot understand.
you guys passed this is a hard and fast regulation at this point. A new home cannot have have a sprinkler system hooked into the town water.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay. And that's in effect immediately?
yes. And a lot of communities have that.
But all the plans that are still in process now, they're all grandfathered in. That's correct.
I have a couple of questions, kind of go back to some of the basics. The way I interpreted the initial round of comments was that it is the preference through these comments that we would not permit the installation of private wells.
For
For
irrigation
irrigation.
purposes.
As a kind of second choice, if those wells were to be permitted, then the request is that they must follow the same rules as folks who are on public water.
Correct.
No, we haven't, I'm sorry, Jim, we haven't discussed that part. That's why I'm
Correct.
here to
Because,
listen
right,
to all the
it's new,
details. Right.
it's new because it's
Yeah.
going through them first.
Right, yeah,
Right.
So,
We haven't even all had a chance to discuss this very thoroughly.
So an irrigation well would have to follow the same setbacks and have to be tested for drinking.
No.
We're more concerned about usage,
Reuse. So-
quantity.
So the May 1st to September 30th
Mhm,
dates
mhm.
that folks who have existing irrigation systems tied to their home water, town water, they can't water their lawns on certain days of the week, or
Right.
ever
If
between
you live
May
in,
1st
if you
and
live in
September
voting zone
30th.
3, you water on the zone 3 day and you water in the morning, in the evening, period.
So the thought is that if folks on, to be fair, that the folks on public water irrigating their lawns, that same set of rules would apply to folks that would install
Right, they
private
can't-
wells, same rules, so
Right.
that everyone's playing by the
Exactly,
same rules.
exactly. That just
You can't
seems,
run across the street and say, why is my neighbor?
The selectmen has water supervisors, water commissioners.
Commissioners.
correct. That's the legal.
Do they have the authority to say no irrigation wells?
I believe we do.
I think you
One
both
thing-
do.
One thing.
Then here you go. No, I mean, my point is, who has the ultimate authority? You know, I mean, because if,
We didn't we just pass off the authority to Jimmy DeBarros and Kevin Cafferty the other night that if we get to that level in the reservoir, that they're not gonna wait for a Tuesday night, a second Tuesday night. They can just implement.
it's an emergency.
Right.
Yeah,
So they're not
it
gonna
will
wait.
be an automatic set now.
You know, the reservoir gets to this level.
Last summer, one of the things we saw was that unfortunately, it was kind of, Wednesday morning right after the meeting, that we dropped under what was then our current limit. So then we waited, and in the meantime, again, no rain and tons of people watering outside, and it dropped significantly in those days waiting for the meeting. So from now on, it's not a qualitative thing, it's just quantitative. When it hits that 49%, that, X feet, that's it. There's no more watering.
Who's the enforcement on that? And or fine or penalty
The
or?
water department, I believe they're going around, they have been going around, making, I think they're knocking on doors, just trying to feel the consumer out, to say, listen, these regulations are in place, are you aware of it? So the first time I do a warning or something like
Right.
that, then they.
But that's for a new installation, if somebody.
No, currently if they see
Existing.
steep cans
Oh,
of
oh,
water.
oh, yeah,
those
okay.
types of-
But I'm back to what you just passed. Anybody who already has it is grandfathered in, as long as they're
Right.
As long as they're still doing
adhering to
the rules,
to
right?
whatever timing is.
When the water bills go out, information goes out in the water bills, there are signs up around town. We will obviously be using the newspapers. A gentleman from WATD came into our meeting and interviewed John right after we moved from this room next door. So we're trying to make sure people know exactly what's going on. There's always talk on Facebook with the Scituate town pages of what's going on. I'm pretty sure that the Town of Scituate website water page will also have that up. To be honest, one of the things Jim has told us is that, neighbors get mad and they call
Well, they do.
and they say, he said, for one thing, we already know who has every year, the 100 people who break the rules every year. And we go and remind them every year, here's the deal. He said, we have people who consistently flaunt the law and who consistently pay the fines.
California, they call the cops on them. They would call them cops on people.
Right, we hope it won't come to that. We would like to see voluntary compliance so that it doesn't get that way. Because again, if I was just watering willy-nilly and you were walking around in dust, you'd call on me. So.
I think we have to be just wary that we don't, send the irrigation wells underground, no pun intended. That
People
So
install
they-
them.
they're gonna install it,
We
not
run
tell
into the
us,
same
and
problem.
they're still then gonna adhere to the Monday, Wednesday, Friday watering, but one of our main goals was to find out where all these wells are, so we
Yes.
know, so when the
Yes.
septic systems go in,
Yes.
there's not this whole conflict of, you
Correct.
can't put a septic here because it's too close to the well.
Yes, we
So-
agree.
I'm just only throwing out that my fear is that we want to make sure we know where the wells are and they're being installed properly and regulated properly.
Right.
And if you start sort of, restricting them in any way, people are just going to do it without telling you.
If,
And then nothing's been accomplished.
right.
You're backwards.
If an irrigation system installer breaks the law, they are liable to the fine as well as the homeowner. So that if you hire, Sam's Irrigation and he comes in, digs the trenches, lines the pipe, puts in all the little heads, and does it all under the table without coming here and getting the permit, he'll be paying the fine as well as the homeowner paying the fine.
And what are the fines? Are they by day? Is it, X number of days the system's installed?
I think the building department would have to tell you, I'm not sure.
It's not a big fine, $50 or $100 or something, it's not a big fine.
Should be bigger.
Well, that's not gonna deter anything.
I was just saying, it should be bigger.
Not a $5,000 job to go,
I was
you know,
just gonna
that's not gonna
say,
deter
right.
Yeah.
anything.
It's
Yeah.
cost of doing business.
Well, in one of the documents that I read, it ranges from $10 to $500, depending on, again, what the situation is, how much of a fine we're talking about. So I guess, again, we could go on about this for ages. You succinctly summed up exactly what we're talking about. Our strongest preference would be is we just don't want to see people digging wells strictly to water their grass, period. However, knowing that that is a really tough reach to make, at the very least, if we're going to permit people to dig a well, not for drinking water because they have that through the town, but just for irrigation, we simply want them to follow all the same rules everybody else follows.
I see some points to that, and I think it's worthy of discussion, but I also, too, when I think about it, what you're talking about is an irrigation well in some respects isn't a bad thing, because they're not drawing from treated water, which is a shame to see put on a lawn. They're just
Well,
pulling it out of the ground and
yeah.
using it, and in a normal season, where we have great snowfall and rain in the spring, and the water table's there, it's a good thing.
Well,
Hey.
and that was why my question, how much of it gets back into it? 5%, 50? I mean,
Well, like you said, there's evaporation, if it's a windy day, you're not watering your lawn, you're watering your neighbor's lawn, it's just going right up.
It's still going back in.
so
no matter
so
where
what's
that
the
lands.
number though?
You're only
throw
getting a
it
very
back in
small
there.
percentage of, if you're pumping out 500 gallons to do your yard on a hot windy day at noon, that 500 gallons.
90%, I asked the question, I
Right.
forgot what the answer
You're
was. I
losing a
said, you
huge
know,
percentage
and
of it.
the
A high
experts,
percentage.
Yeah.
They're very high.
Yeah.
Geez, is there any literature on that to teach a perspective? I'd love to learn it, just to read it, to understand it.
We
When
realize
is the best
that
time to
that
water your
is
lawn? When-
a big responsibility of our
Yeah.
committee is to do that. And yes, there's a program called the Greenscapes Program, and they publicize all up and down the South Shore, and every town helps pay into supporting that program. And they are all about environmentally how to do green landscaping. Now, again, I'm probably never going to be their ideal water resource committee person, because what they're going to say is stop planting so much stuff right away, or only plant native things that don't take as much water. And I'm sorry, I got to have my flowers. So then the next best thing is, well, use a lot of mulch and only water at certain times of the day and just use drip irrigation. And so, yes, there are lots of
And have the census, so you're not watering your lawn.
Precisely.
But
There's a
nor'easter
lot
going
of
on.
good
Yes.
information that's available, and what we're hoping is that we can, again, it's available to the public, but maybe they don't see it often enough, and trying to get that out even more often.
I'm sure
The other
California has
sources.
it all everywhere. I'm sure they've all done it every possible.
Right,
thing they can
right.
possibly do.
And it's on the radio and the television every time you turn around, is the new steps California residents are being required to take.
Is there a plan to use Scituate Community TV for some of this outreach? In terms of both greenscape, water management?
Is there a
as
plan?
well as-
No. Am I open to the idea? Yes.
We work with John Roser, often on public service announcements.
Yep.
And they hit their YouTube channel, plus it rolls on community TV.
Great.
And I
Thank
learn,
you.
I
That's
learn more
great.
and more that I'm here that I get, oh, I've seen you on TV. So if people are seeing me on TV, they're certainly seeing the other, potentially more important
Right.
messages that are truly applicable to them at any given time. So it may be worthwhile,
Mhm.
whether we're advertising regulations or, we're advertising new rules, regulations, and bylaws that we're implementing in town,
Mhm.
as well as helpful hints on how to do it better.
Yes.
It may be a great tool
Yes,
to use
thank
to
you.
reach people
Right.
in any message like
Right.
this. So that's one thought. And then my other thought, or question actually, is are there any towns that you've seen that do prevent installation of private wells for irrigation?
Other than Falmouth and Middleton?
I
I'm
thought-
sure
I
there's
thought
several.
I thought
Yeah.
those were restricting private use to be the same as public water users. I thought that's what those two are.
Those two towns prevented
Prevent
100%.
installation, or do they have to be consistent with public water users?
No, I'm sorry.
Maybe I misunderstood.
Consistent with public water users. I think it's other towns, and like you said, it's private wells that are located near public wells, near water bodies. Middleton has two different bylaws. One has to do with the town selectmen when they have water restrictions. The other just essentially says that the same laws apply to all water users. So when you've got that May 1st to September 30th ban, I guess, restriction in place. It's not a total ban, it's a that it just applies to the irrigation people who use underground private home wells instead of town water. But we can do more research on it and find out more about it. I realize you may want to go ahead and tidy this up and vote on it tonight. We just,
No,
Oh,
I mean, I
this
speak
is
for myself.
ongoing. This is ongoing.
Absolutely.
Great,
Yeah.
because we obviously need more time.
We've got the most important thing we wanted done, implemented with having people come in and register
Right.
and stuff like that. Now, this is the fine detail, and this is why we put it out to get
Right.
input, and I can't
Right.
speak for
Well, we
mass
are,
members, but
we
we're
are
not in any
getting,
rush.
we are getting questions and we are getting
Applications.
permit application requests for private irrigation wells based on what we have implemented to date. So the pieces of this that we, that you voted on in December, it's working in the sense that people are coming in and saying, I want to install a private irrigation well, what do I need to do? Right now, that process is, here's the application form and here's the checklist, fill it out and get it going. So do we, in the interim, while we're still working out the details, do we prevent installation?
No, you can't do that. You can't stop commerce.
You can hold it up with permits for 30 days. You could, like anything else, so we have to
I
study
wouldn't be
it.
in favor of that either.
Yeah, I don't
We haven't had anything in place, and that's just sort of a knee-jerk reaction, in my opinion. I mean.
No, I just wanted to be sure, because
I mean, if you said we had three, you could get 200 applications tomorrow, and that may all make us look silly. But,
Yeah, no, the only reason I ask is, as you're saying, we do have new homes, we do have new developed, some of which are on private water for drinking, and then others who have public water for drinking but want to put in an irrigation well. So we have been handing out the portions of the regulations that we have enacted, which are, here's an application fee, here's a checklist, do all your homework, give us all this stuff for review, and if it meets what we have in place so far, yes, here you go, here's your permit.
It almost seems that we have a caveat emptor in here, that the irrigation well, and again, just shooting from the hip, that certain times of the year, like with the selectmen, you can use your well anytime you want, in the winter, I suppose. And maybe there's something in there when the levels drop to a certain level, then you gotta fall into a certain line, and when it drops to an emergency level, then it doesn't matter what you own.
Right.
You're not irrigating, washing, or doing anything with that well water.
Right.
And as long as you know that before you install it, because again, if you have a wet summer, then I'd rather see someone use an irrigation well. They're not taxing the town treated drinking water.
Correct.
Well, the town's gonna say they're also not paying for the new water pipes. Oh, did I,
No, was what I was waiting to say. The one downside to wells is, it's not going through the meter.
Right.
So just keep that in mind,
Well, okay, but look at this, look at the big picture. If you stop putting all these restrictions, and I'm not saying I'm for or against it right now or anything, because it's something that we need to talk about. You're looking at people that may want to move their businesses and or here, and if there's some restrictions that may or may not sway them to come to town.
Businesses, though, you're talking about restaurants?
I'm just talking in general that,
Oh, you're talking about.
I'm talking about, increasing the tax base all around, you know what I mean?
I think most commerce tends to be exempt from this kind of thing. It's mostly residential users that are the concern.
But even the plans that, we all know is going on in town for all these big developments, I mean, that may or may not, sway somebody like Tolbert to come in here and want to do what they want to do, and at the same time, adding tax base to the town and helping out with whatever, they're going to help the town out with. And that may or may not sway a big company like that to do business with us.
well, let's just say.
That's a big picture that,
Well, we have a water withdrawal permit, and we can, take out so much per day, and this is what I think John and the group is, come before us. Look, we're up for review here. DEP wants us to do this, this, and this. Tony asked a question, what if we don't? And I can't remember, right, so I forget what the answer to that was. Tony, good question, they're gonna give us a slap on the wrist? I can't recall, but this is, I think, what kind of started this whole thing, we need to, be, not proactive, but our withdrawal permit is coming up. We're
Right.
getting close.
And in general, Scituate has a good reputation with the DEP in terms of our water consumption. The water department has done a great job in eliminating a lot of leaks where you lose, whether it's in your house or in the town. When you've got leaks, that's money burning.
Absolutely.
And we've done a great job with that. We've also done a lot of good, positive things. Jim's gotten awards for the way they are keeping the water treatment plant more efficient, more up to date, and things are working better and better. But again, 65 gallons per person per day is considered the standard for the state, and Situate's been doing very well in terms of educating people on how to conserve water, and we just don't want to backslide at this point because the meteorological long-term forecasts are for longer, hotter, drier summers. And that is potentially over the next 20, 30, 40 years can be a problem. It's like the same people that study whether or not, we're going to have levels of sea rising and taking over Front Street.
Yeah,
They
there'll be
also-
less people living in town.
They also study, are
Including
we,
myself, I mean, but
are we gonna get enough
real estate
rain?
will be underwater, so, I'll be someone else's burden.
and colder, and longer, colder winters. Yep,
Trying to get some.
yep.
I just have a question, not to put you guys on the spot, but after our Tuesday night meeting, I wasn't sure if what I saw was supposed to happen. Why would, maybe you can ask Jimmy this, why would we be spilling water over the reservoir if we're in this situation right now? The other day, right by the rotary, I saw water going over the dam going down the brook, and I
I saw
said,
two of them, yeah, two of them were.
Is it?
Something to do with the herring?
I was gonna say, it's
I
probably for the
don't, I
fish.
hope there's a good reason for it. I mean, now the heron, more important than, drinking water.
It's probably for the fish, but I can ask and find out and get back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll find out. The water department's also slightly shorthanded at the moment. Some personnel, juggling around, moving here and there, so it's hard to get in touch
I
with Jim and get
assume there's an
answers.
answer for it.
Yes,
Back- back
but
to
we can ask.
My other question is whose decision, where does this decision rest? Is it a water decision or is it a Board of Health decision?
Well,
Because we're not the water supervisors, but we are the Board of Health.
Well, we got involved, you remember why, because of the situation of putting, like you said, the well close
Yeah.
to, the septic system.
Mhm.
That falls under our jurisdiction. As far as water usage goes and restrictions, I don't know,
We can-
that's where the question, that's where the
If a
question
leg,
lies.
if a well gets put in, this is, I think what comes to our jurisdiction is how we want,
To control the flow.
how we want to control the testing of it or the installation of it or
Setbacks,
yes, stuff like
drinking water
that.
quality.
Mhm.
But I don't want to be on a fool's errand either and go through the process and then have it eliminated on a different track either.
Well, I think what we're doing now is working with all the boards and having the input like this.
Mhm.
And we may not nail it exactly as somebody wants it nailed, but I feel that we're gonna try and accommodate as much as we can. And there'll probably be a difference of opinion with the three of us, and at some point, it's hopefully gonna boil out, and we'll have something that will hold. And again, it may not be perfect to everybody's standard, but I think we'll be able to sleep at night that we did the best we could.
And at least the towns or regions that I used to come up with this draft, it was the Board of Health who implemented these and enforced these. To what extent they had input from others, I don't know, but at least the towns that we used for Board of Health regulations,
Mhm.
Board of Health driven, Board of Health enforced. I haven't seen other towns in terms of, bylaws, because obviously bylaws would not come to us.
That's
So
right.
at least it seems as though there are certain towns where the Board of Health does one thing and it's potentially supplemented or further detailed via bylaw. I mean, I don't know for sure if Falmouth has private well regulations, what you referred to, or bylaws.
Right.
So I kind of wonder, I'll have to look,
Right.
does a town like Falmouth have regulations set forth by the Board of Health and then have a separate bylaw that is kind of a big framework catch-all for things that wouldn't necessarily be covered here? in their specifics.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so it
That's a
just
good point.
trumps whatever. we-
Yeah,
Right.
because I think it's a domino effect. I guess, again, we're all most concerned with the health and safety of citizens, and water is one of the primary concerns as far as that goes. Beautiful yards do not contribute to our health and our safety, and irrigation, whether it's my handheld hose or my underground system or anything else, is for my yard. And so if we allow too many wells that are strictly for the purpose of watering grass to take place, that's taking water away from the water we drink and use to fight fires and everything else. So again, it depends, because some people are going to have deeper wells than others. Some people are going to have 2 wells. They're going to have their drinking water well and their irrigation well and their septic system, and that's a lot to overload on one parcel of property. So I think what we're hearing is that, like you said, it's not super clear whose responsibility is. I think we're supposed to all work together on this, and I think we're all supposed to do it for the benefit of all the citizens of town, whether or not they have a well or town water, because that water all essentially comes from the same place. So whether you get to pull it from the town well and it goes to the pipes in your house, or you pull it from your personal well and it goes in the pipes in your house, it's all the same water. So again, we'd rather see that water go for human consumption as opposed to lawns, no matter how it gets there. And again, yeah, it's partly up to the selectmen, partly up to the water committee, partly up to health board. We know that we could, if we needed to, get police to go by and say to people, I see your sprinklers running, what are you doing? We just don't want to go do that. That seems extreme, but it's not California. Luckily, we don't have to do that. Not yet, we don't have to do that. Shirley's family lives in California, so she gets a lot of updates about how horrible it is there.
25% cut, remove lawns, yeah. But also,
I don't mean to end this discussion, but obviously number 3 is very relevant to, because it's an example of using, so somebody has approached us to use their sump pump
For irrigation.
and pump their sump pump out for irrigation.
I was going to actually request that you stick around.
Water
It's very
that
relevant.
accumulates in the basement,
Yes.
rainwater comes up through the cement,
Have you gone to see it?
floods. Your
I
basement
have-
floods, you take
I
a sump
have
pump and you.
We'll wait on that until, unless you want to switch gears.
I just want to make sure I understand what we're talking about. Okay.
She'll explain it.
Okay.
Yeah, but are we,
I just wanted to ask one, maybe not final, but at least for this round, one further question about private well regulations. So I know both in this discussion here and then when John and Kevin were presenting to the selectmen last week, one of the options, if private wells would not be an option for irrigation purposes, one of the options was cisterns.
Yes.
And our regulations, at least in draft form, specifically say cisterns are not to be installed.
oh,
So the concern with cisterns, obviously is safety of children.
Right.
Having, basically open pits of water or pits of water that, the lid can be removed and children can drown in them, such as, like less secure swimming pools. almost.
Correct.
So I just kind of wanted to bring that to your attention because it's a small piece in here, but it has a pretty significant effect on what the other options would be.
Correct me if I'm wrong, aren't there cisterns that you can install that are underground?
There are systems.
So there's a safety.
Yep, there are some that you can install underground, and we have had actually a couple of calls in the last few weeks, one just last week, where a gentleman says, I'm hooking up to town sewer, can I use my septic tank as a cistern? So people are getting very creative, and I give them credit for, trying to come up with new ways, A, to reuse items, and also to, be creative in catching water. In that particular case, it would be a violation of Title V. Once you connect to sewer, you need to properly abandon your septic system. So it's not an option, but people are getting creative and people are trying to come up with innovative ways to water their lawns. So going back to the cisterns, if we decide that they should be an option to kind of create a compromise for some of these things, we'll have to kind of revisit that and make sure that we specify, you know, underground and whatever safety
Right,
measures
right.
we put, and not just some open pit in someone's yard that, you know, a kid
Correct.
could fall in.
Right, because I have seen, well, you know, boards at water discussions with underground systems that are operated by a pump so that you're collecting the rainwater, it's being sent into the system for storage, but that way you can filter it. It's just in general safer. I think the point of those two is that they're not going to freeze because, like you were discussing with the geothermal systems, is that you can make it deep enough that it's less likely to freeze, or you have a way of emptying it completely in the winter and then starting over again. Again, I'm not super up on that technology. I'm pretty old school.
His whole backyard is a pool and a cistern. That's what, and he's got some bees and he's got a huge garden, but yeah, he's recycling everything he possibly can.
Mm.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, he does, he's recycled everything.
Before we move on to item 3.2, I just kind of wanted to review a comment that we got from the assessor's office today. Based on, you know, gentlemen coming in for the private well installation at a house that's being built right now. So in section 3.0, specifically section 3.2, number 5, proof that the owner of any property within 200 feet of the applicant's property has been notified of that applicant's intention to install a private well. I learned that anybody who wants to do anything that requires notification, they go to the assessor's office, they request a certified abutters list, and then either the town department such as ours, or the person that needs to send out this notification, sends out whatever letters it is by certified mail and gets those returns. So the thing here is currently the assessor's abutter lists are for 100, 300, and 500 foot radius, or radii. We have requested a 200 foot radius based on the distance at which we're requesting people to look for things.
Yep.
So the question
Change
is.
that to, 100 or 300?
Right, so to coordinate with another office, the question is, do we notify abutters 100 or 300 feet that, you know, that somebody is intending to install a well, so that if in fact they wanted to come in, they could. If not, they just know what's around and they can plan their septic system. So it's something to, you know, again, coordinate with another town department in participating. So the question is, you know, do we increase or decrease?
Well, I would just say that somebody uses then has to use the 300 list that the appraiser has. And we keep ours at 200 because that's based on the 100. There's a reason that we're at 200 because of the separation of the systems.
So
somebody, you know, gets an abutter list that might include a couple more properties, but when the surveyor goes out, I mean, they get notice, but they're not affected.
Okay,
So you want to go to 300.
So we would use.
Well, they would just, you know, we keep ours at 200, but the person who then would have to get the 300 foot list from
As
his
opposed to
assessor,
the 100,
as opposed to 100.
you know what I mean?
Right,
You know what I mean?
so in essence, the person getting the list would wind up notifying people within a 300 foot radius.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that would be my
This is
suggestion.
forces them to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the first
Yeah,
time.
but we changed that in here, right?
That's-
Oh, yeah.
To 300.
Yeah, it's a 300.
What's that?
So
Change that,
so
yeah,
number
300.
5 is going to change.
No, that's what I understood what you're saying, but I don't think anybody else
No,
has.
we keep ours at 200. We don't change ours to 300. They just have to then go and get, you know, it's like buying, you only need a half a pound or something, and you gotta go buy a pound, because that's,
I understand what he's trying to do.
I understand it, but I think it should.
Well,
I think it
but
has
if,
to
but
be
if we make it at
specific,
300, then we've completely overstepped
Right,
our,
we've covered everything.
So if the assessor's office gives them a list of abutters within 300 feet, that person then needs to figure out who's within 200 feet and only notify those?
No,
No,
he's saying
no,
just
you
notify
notify
them, even though they
Oh,
aren't
everybody.
necessarily affected.
Up until
Right.
300 feet.
Right,
Right.
right. Yeah.
So you just have
So,
to
yeah, I thought I understood.
find a
this.
way to
Yeah.
Because the
word
whole
that.
idea is, you don't want somebody putting a septic system or a well within that, so they're being notified, and then if they're gonna try to go do that, then they have to, at some point.
I just think someone's gonna get confused when
They
they
are.
read this and go 200 feet,
Right.
go to the assessors
Why
and
do
go,
I have
no,
to
it's
do
300,
300?
200. You're gonna
Right.
have back and forth, and somebody's gonna go, what? I just want to be consistent. If you change one, it should be changed here to go to 300.
They said
So that way,
they,
there's no question, it's just 300.
the assessor said she could compile a list for 200 feet if we had to do that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So if that's a better option, maybe we should just stay with that, if that's what you
200.
prefer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think there's a scale on the computer that you go 200.
You would think.
I don't see how the assessors, I don't, yeah. I don't know.
It sounded
Yeah, I
like it
guess-
was work
I guess-
for them.
I guess historically, so the Board of Health has never requested certified abutters list. We haven't had regulations in place
Right.
that go beyond the 100 foot, because anything septic related was 100 foot. So, anybody who wanted a certified list went into the assessor's office and said, give me the 100 foot. This is new, whereas the 100, 300, and 500 feet
Are in existence.
are in existence, they work for zoning, they work for planning, they work for conservation. So this is kind of the one that's outside the box.
She was
So,
hoping we could work with one of those, and if we couldn't, she'd have to compile a new list for us. So that's why we're
Or a
asking.
200-foot list.
right,
Yes,
a 200 foot demarcation.
Gotcha.
So the question is, do we change
This
our
to 300.
radius to 300
Right.
to match what the assessor's capabilities are at this point? Or do we keep it 200 and request that the assessors create
Formulate
a
Change it to
200
300.
radius?
I would say-
It's already done. Just change it to 300, it's already done.
Yeah, I was gonna say leave it at the 200, and we got probably a month or two that the assessors could know that we can do
Because
this.
the 300 is not a relevant figure for us, the 200
right.
is.
So if you'd
Because,
rather
you know, the
stick
200
with
is
the
a very
200.
pertinent, it's not
Yeah,
just.
they
pulled
said,
out.
she said she would do it if she had to.
I know, I know.
Yeah, so
She
it's,
did.
Just
right, and we're in no rush, so we're not,
Right.
Right,
we're not putting them out like, hey, we're doing this tomorrow.
All
no,
right.
Yeah.
No,
snap,
she
snap.
said she-
No, it's, yeah.
Trying to create less work.
right, we were just hoping we could do it that way, but if it doesn't work, then she said
If
she'd
she
do it.
says they'll do it, then
She,
she'll do it.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
All right.
so related, item number, you have more?
Yeah, just one question on the irrigation. On the wells, if we were to do the restrictions, does that also include the existing wells or just for the new wells?
Yeah.
Existing wells as
Yeah,
well,
so
right?
part of the regulations that drafted is that existing wells need to register with us. They are what they are, they're grandfathered in, they are where they are. We just need to know for several reasons, including septic setbacks, where they are, that they exist. And we don't permit something that could impact a septic system and vice versa. So all of the regulations that we would put in place are applicable to existing wells that would register
Right.
and then new wells moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So item number 3 is similar. and-
We're all set, you guys are all set with talking about the, well,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of under the impression that we digest the conversation
Yeah,
here and then we.
It's gonna be a rolling, it's gonna be a
It's gonna be a
rolling.
rolling thing.
a rolling.
I will try and get you a complete copy. This was, I don't know, 36 pages at home, and my printer was running out of ink as fast as I could get it going. So I only printed the pages that were directly affecting this issue, but I've asked for a complete document. I'll make sure I get a copy of it to you, because it does specifically discuss like what other watersheds do, what other towns.
Martha,
Yeah.
where is that from?
That is the back cover, and actually you can have that.
If you just want to email it to me.
Yes.
And then I
Yeah.
can
Yes.
distribute it to them.
Yep, will do,
And then more information.
absolutely.
Great.
Can you write your email on that for me?
Yeah.
And I'll do that. Do you have any other questions that you need us for?
I believe Jen wanted you just to have your input on that third item on the,
Some.
using some for irrigation purposes.
Thanks.
Sure. So,
We want to move along, so we're done, there's no vote, there's no nothing, we'll take information in, we have other information from other boards that seem to still be coming in, so we have ongoing discussion, so we move it to 2 weeks from now, or a month from now, or whatever, okay.
Do you want us to come back in 2 weeks or a month, or will you let us know when you're going to discuss it again so we can try to attend if you need us? Okay.
Yeah, input's always good. It's good to hear it, so. All right, moving on. Item number 3, 23 Beaver Dam Road, use of sump pump water for irrigation. Is anybody here from 23 Beaver Dam Road?
No.
Just for discussion?
yeah, it's kind of a, well, we talked to the property owner, he came in with kind of a unique, creative way to reuse water, or use water to irrigate, and he needed to know what, if anything, he needed to do, per our office, knowing that, private well regulations are going to be put in place. So he currently has, a home built in 2009, with a sump pump, and I've given each of you this email. What he wants to do is take the water that's being pumped from his sump pump and use it as a means to irrigate his lawn. It's his belief that the system that he would create would not be a well. He would merely be using the water already being pumped from his basement, and he would collect it and then, distribute it onto his lawn for irrigation. So he was looking for board's advice and consideration as to whether this would be an appropriate means or an allowable means of irrigating his lawn. So what he did was he sent us a picture and a brief description of this by email, asked that we talk about it and then circle back with him as to what the board's thoughts were.
Comment?
I didn't check back, do we have, what's our definition of a well?
Well, I know it's supposed to have a setback, I think, from the foundation and other things. And I kind of thought about this too, and having a well in your basement.
An open well.
An open well.
Not just a well, an open well.
I mean, everybody, I think in my own basement, which I don't use like a former owner did, but he used to fix small engines in his basement. I have the table and I can see the board that he pulled out, and I found spark plugs in the dirt floor. And to have a well in your basement, not to say that this gentleman is, who knows what else somebody could do in their basement.
You're defining it as a well.
They're in here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
We could use these.
but you have a 5-gallon bucket. Do you consider that an open well?
Yeah, right.
Then will that's your,
Is it dirt basement or is
That's
it
your-
slab?
Well, he
then the
says
question is,
it's
how far is
concrete
the sump
floor
pump down?
over
Because if your sump pump is
plastic,
down
over
a
gravel.
foot, it's really a sump pump. If it's down 4 feet, it might be a well.
Right, yeah, but it's still in your house, and, if you store fuel down there, or you spill something, or you, stuff you shouldn't be doing that you just do, it just doesn't seem like it's
This is any.
pumping that out on your lawn.
It doesn't even discuss depth, it says any. The word well, so used in these regulations, shall include any pit, pipe, excavation, spring, casing, drill hole, or other source of water to be used for any purpose of supplying potable drinking water or non-potable irrigation water in the town, and shall include dug well, driven or tubular wells, drilled well, artisan or otherwise, springs, gravel-packed, gravel-walled wells, gravel-developed, and wash boring. And
But I think well too, also there's a setback from the foundation, that it has to be so far from the foundation.
So
This is in the foundation,
This is in his basement.
it's within the
Uh-huh.
perimeter of the foundation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could be polluted or contaminated very easily.
He's not all concerned where all the water's coming from, he'd just rather use it.
Well, here's the thing, so if you see in the email, it says,
Right?
that he's been,
That's
high water table and, to use his words, an underground stream
House number
that
should have been built.
exists. So for whatever reason, you know, the groundwater table is high, whether it's an underground stream or certain aquifer, and then.
Sorry, we're not laughing at you. That's what I thought. Who let him build there? Sorry.
Could be an old house.
I looked at a
No,
house
so that
last
was
year,
brand new.
and they had
2009.
sump pumps going all year round.
Really?
Yeah,
2 sump pumps all year round. There's a house I just looked at last year. So they exist.
Wow.
I'm telling you, they do. So he probably bought this house, that's the way it was, you know?
Right. And
you're supposed to look at the ground table by modeling, and even for a foundation, you gotta know where the water table is. It's like that house never should have been built, that there's water in the basement, or that there should be no basement in the house.
Well, he's
Right,
he's
right.
coming to
It's
get
probably
it. How
should
would
have
he
been slab.
just- I mean,
Right, he's coming because he wants to
asking
know
for
right
permission,
there,
not
right?
for
yes.
forgiveness.
Right,
He's just-
and it's there. I mean, it's
So,
not, you know.
if he doesn't do that, where would he put the water? Down the sewers?
Storm drain.
Yeah,
Storm drain?
storm drain, you know,
So-
or, you know, pump it out
Pump
into
it-
the lawn with, you know, a tube like so many other people do,
Yeah.
just to
Right,
clear
right.
their basements.
Right,
And
and so-
that's what he was saying, it was,
Right.
you know, so right now I'm
Right.
taking the water from my basement, I'm pumping it out into my yard,
Right.
and it's going out through a, you know, a tube, a pipe or whatever. So I'm thinking I could reuse it in a more appropriate way, you know, is this something I could do? So he's coming to ask, you
Yeah.
know, permission or
Yeah.
input,
Yeah.
rather
So
than just
what's the-
doing it.
Environmentally, is it better to put it in the storm drain or just put it for irrigation, watering the flowers and grass?
Well, why do all these new stormwater management? Why, it's like putting in septic systems in your lawn, and instead you catch it off all the gutters, and then you're spending $30,000 to run it into the ground.
Right.
No different. Why is that stormwater management stuff in place without maybe some reuse capability?
I mean, I have to admire his Rube Goldberg thinking. You know, life fancy lemons, make lemonade, but I would just wonder, I mean, like you were saying about the cisterns, does he have a kid at home? Does he have a dog? I would wonder about the safety of having an open pit with water in it in the house.
Geez, how would a pump or 2 pumps just going all day long, burning out, just worrying about the electricity alone? Just-
Exactly.
I mean, those
Yeah.
pumps are going all the time, it's,
That's a scary thought.
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when we're
So,
on
but your response is that is considered, based on our definition,
it sounds like it's
and therefore.
defined as a well, but it's not because it's within the perimeter of the foundation, and the well's supposed to be actually. To meet any sump pump is considered a well if it's an open pit running water.
Jennifer, is this house, did this have any history of water going out onto the sidewalk? Yes.
I don't know, I didn't ask.
It's right near there. It's at 23 somewhere at the top of Beaver Dam Road. I'm sorry, the top of Jericho, where Beaver Dam is. And those are some of those new houses, I think, it's right in there. And there was an issue with water going off into the sidewalk, and Kevin had an issue with it because it was freezing in the winter. So something, you know, have high water, you know, groundwater table there or something, a spring or something's going on. And it's it's right in there. Must be in one of these houses. It's fairly new, you know, the big ones.
Yeah, this was built in 2009.
The old Amato's property.
But even that house on number 45, the one that they were selling, that also had a problem with water. They were recently selling that, and that was an old house. So I think it's just that
So,
area.
yeah, high water table for whatever
Right.
reason.
We can't approve it, but we.
No, I couldn't think of proving it. I mean, like I say, you don't know how it gets contaminated in somebody's basement.
I agree.
Would you could encourage him to do it though, couldn't you? Or would you not say anything? And let him,
Well, what Russell's saying though, if it's by definition, if it is a well, then the well can't be, it has to be X amount away from the foundation, so it's acting as a well, but if it's a well, then it doesn't fit the.
did he say it was a well, it was just it's a sump
It's a
pump?
sump pump.
It could be a poured foundation like you have in your house that just,
It is.
It is.
right, all right, so it's pooling, all right? Oh, so it does have a little pit.
It's in the corner,
You dig-
right, so it's stuck down.
So that's, That's why you asked the definition of a well.
Yeah, well, because that could be a foot down.
Right.
But if the next guy's 3 feet down, the
That's
next
right.
guy's 4 feet down, right? So then when does it become really?
This is
low?
a
That's
trickle
something.
down, right?
Because then you're just pumping the groundwater, you're not pumping really.
I'm wondering if that's, I wonder if he just lifted his pump up, would he solve the problem? You know, it's, you know,
Well,
It says he's been informed by surrounding neighbors
thanks
that
for Captain Obvious coming
there's
to the.
a known underground stream.
Right.
There's a known underground stream
Right.
there, I guess.
I'll snap a shape of
Is this, are we voting on this?
You just want feedback, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, he
he wants feedback as to
Yeah.
what he could and couldn't do, was trying to figure out whether, our regulations would apply to this scenario.
I don't know if we could license that as an irrigation well. Just, I mean, I guess you could have variance to it, but that would be a variance of it inside the house, and that opens up, again, that's the precedence. I mean, why can't the next guy say, well, why don't I just put the well in the middle of my
Right.
house and call it a day and irrigate the lawn?
I
And
mean, I certainly don't think we can approve that as a.
There's a reason why it's away from the house.
As an acceptable well,
Yeah.
no.
I think it'd be too easily contaminated. And this guy could be a very conscientious guy, but it's the next guy that moves into the house, or the next family, or however, I think you got a sump pump and that's it. I don't think we could license that. I don't think it would be.
So would you
I don't think it
recommend,
would be in the town's best interest.
so would you recommend he dig a well outside? I mean, not from a legitimate standpoint in terms of us as people who are giving advice in our professional capacities. If he dug a well outside because there's supposedly a stream in that area, would that solve the problem of him having water in the basement?
I'm not an engineer, but if there's a stream, then there's a way to go around the foundation with what they call a curtain drain and redirect that water. Now, if you redirect that water and give someone else a problem, you may be liable for it.
Yeah.
If you can prove that it was always going that way, maybe you can. Maybe you have to work with the town and redirect that water into a storm drain.
Well, and this,
I mean, it's not really my job to say, but
I think this opens a huge kettle of fish, because we talk about this in our meetings where we've got people coming before us who want to build a home and they're too near a tributary. If he has a stream and it's leading toward our drinking water supply, like you said, first of all, the house never should have been permitted to be built there in the first place, but depending on where the stream comes from and where it goes, that could be getting contaminated
Just by having a house.
just by the house being there. And, I mean, well, if he asked me, I would tell him, first of all, I'd get that water tested, right? Just, even if you buy a cheap kit, test the water. There's a lab in Marshfield that will test the water for you for, I think it's $20 or something. And I would want to know what's in the water first before I put it on my grass or my flowers or my garden, or again, let my kid.
Well, that's part of our regulation too, of an irrigation well, because that was the thought of the Board of Health, that the water has to be tested to some standard, because children and animals would be playing on the lawn, or on a hot summer day, they may be playing in the sprinklers. And
Yep.
Right.
that's why we have setbacks from a septic system, why we have
Yes.
setbacks from a foundation. We want the
Yes.
water not to be maybe potable water, but obviously we don't want something
It
that's.
shouldn't be contaminated.
That area at the end of Jericho, that's right where the town sewer stops, correct? Right at that intersection is where it stops, right?
That's correct. There's a
So
lot
those
of
houses are probably on town sewer?
Those ones we're talking about? No, they're
No,
on private systems.
there, so
I know.
it's right where the lights, so it's those right there, those are private, so anything the other way is town,
At the
correct?
top of the light chip, the old Cape,
Yeah.
that could be tied in, but we're talking about the old Amato's house, and Chris McKenna built those 3 houses. He did not come in for a sewer tie-in. But you go further up Beaver Dam Road, and I distinctly remember allowing those people spaghetti lines to get to the public sewer system.
Like
You
up
know,
the
that
hill
would be
toward
part of the
Hazel?
problem, too, though.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. There's a
Whatever
lot of
water
spaghetti
there is,
lines
they
up
have the
there.
French drain capability of running in the stone with the soil lines.
Right, right.
That's very
I'm
plausible.
almost positive they're on private systems, those houses, I'm almost positive.
That's why we're.
I wonder if we should go look at this.
There's situations like that all over town.
Right.
I'm not
Absolutely,
sure
that's
how
what
long
I'm
you've been in
saying,
town,
they're
but there's
everywhere.
springs around all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, you could look at it. Be a long list of places you'd be looking at.
Right.
So what do we do? What do you
Yeah.
want us to do?
For a long time.
Yeah.
You gonna get back to them?
Right, yeah, so we indicated, you know, we would email him as to whether, you know, he should informally apply for a permit or, you know, provide recommendations as to what he should and shouldn't do with it. I mean, obviously, you know, we won't go into, you know, we can't go into his basement and enforce whatever it is, you know, he ultimately intends to do. But it seems as though, you know, the consensus, and correct me wrong, is, you know, we would not be able to prove it as an acceptable irrigation well, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is, you know, the water could be contaminated or could backflow, you know, and then further contaminate the stream that's underground that he believes the water is coming from initially. So you could kind of create this cycle of pulling it out and putting it back in and contaminating.
A lot of damage. Yeah.
And then, you know,
I
further.
commend his thought pattern on that, but I do, but it just doesn't.
And that
And I
was.
think if he heard what we were saying, I would pray that he would understand that.
I think he
Why
was
we would,
very reasonable. He
yeah.
was just trying to
Yeah,
do it
he-
the right way.
Right.
Yeah. He's got a little problem trying
Yeah.
to fix it and,
Yeah.
yeah.
And saying, you know, I have this water anyway, you know,
Right.
I'm
Yeah, why
putting
not
it
put
out
it
of
on
my
the water?
basement, so,
Right.
you know, what
I
can
mean,
I
he
do with
didn't
it
have to even
productively?
ask us, and he
Right.
did, so.
Right.
Yeah, that works for a certain time of the year, but you couldn't do that in the winter.
We haven't presented an option though, because we're not gonna be able to pass it as a well, so we don't have an option. Sean's option is just pull the thing out, and see if it's still coming.
See how high the
Yeah,
tide
see how
comes.
Steve, yeah.
He might be pumping groundwater.
Yeah, he's right back where he started. He has to discharge, he leads it to a storm drain in some capacity.
Right, is to continue doing what he's doing and, you know, pump it through a sump pump, but discharge it, you know, ultimately.
With the
to storm drain.
recommendation of at least getting the water tested for peace of mind purposes, especially if he's using it for whatever. he's using it
Maybe you could ask him to share the results with you. Couldn't hurt. He doesn't have to, but you could ask.
Don't want to know.
Okay, that's fair.
It ain't a well.
Mm.
You can do it as well. Any other administrative invoice approvals? We signed all those as we were going through our
Thank you.
meeting.
Thank you very much. This was
Minute
enlightening.
approvals. We've had some
Thank you,
minutes.
and I'll email you when the
Okay.
next meeting comes that
Okay,
we.
and I'll try and get a complete, you know, more details about what other towns do. We'll talk.
Yeah, that'll be fabulous.
Thank you very much for
I
your
think some of
time.
those points are very open too, and I hope that we can work within some, like I say, we may not come to a 100% agreement, maybe we do, but
Well,
it's nice to work with
it's
people.
okay. I mean, we feel like we're making strides slowly but surely.
Yeah.
You know, gradually moving people into the right direction, just being more conservation minded and being aware again of not polluting the water we do have and just not using too much of the water we have. So we realize, you know, you have to do what you have to do.
Awesome,
All
awesome.
right, thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you.
Some other stuff.
Meeting minutes.
What's that?
Meeting minutes.
Meeting minutes, we can do that quick, yes. You had emailed some, they were of the date, I have,
May 4th, right?
Yes, May 4th.
Those are the only ones, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I only had one change. There was,
Okay.
right in the beginning, it said Mr. Russell, and then the rest of it said Mr. Clark.
Oh,
That was
yes,
it.
that's right, Mr. Clark.
That was when I was.
See, I have to have something,
There
I
we
way to
go.
prove I
There we
actually
go.
read them, and that I was conscious of
I didn't
them,
catch
so.
it
Can you just make that?
Yeah, I got it.
don't have a copy.
I've
The only change was about him, but that's.
Well,
What about me?
self-centered, you know, what can you say?
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's why we have to read.
I didn't have any, I didn't see anything else.
I wasn't here that day, so.
That was it, so it's your
Okay,
eyes.
so I vote to make a motion to approve those, what's the
May
date?
4th.
May 4th minutes.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Windmill, on, off, we've had testing done, there's been some emails going around, is this something we can bring up at the next meeting?
Next meeting? Sure, I can email Gordon Dean, request that he provide us with a formal compiled report, and also, we can have him present in front of the board if we like.
Awesome. Do you think knowing, not knowing, might be in 2 weeks or a month, 2 weeks? You think he should be able to put this together?
I can email him first thing in the morning
That would
and
be
see if he
awesome.
can come, which of the 2 meetings he can come, but worst case scenario would be 2 meetings out.
The emails had indicated that testing was the same as the other previous 3 sound samplings, not exactly the same.
Yeah, I
but-
don't know about the same, but
Passed.
both, yeah, right,
All passed, yeah.
within DEP's required parameters.
So I guess that'll be good. He can come in and explain that, what he had. If the other general public wants to come in, then that would be great. And we could have a vote one way or the other, maybe in 2 weeks. And
Well, why don't we just ask for the report in 2 weeks, and then maybe put it on the agenda for 2 out for the public to then have some input, or if there is input.
Yeah, I was hoping to put it in 2 weeks, but
Yeah, I mean, that might
Have the
just,
report.
yeah, that might just.
Just stretching it out.
That might be, okay, whatever you want.
yeah. Well, I'm just thinking if Gordon comes in and we publicize it, we have to. It's going to be a public meeting, a public vote, then
But people then won't have a chance to review them.
Right, yeah, no, I think it makes sense that if he presents both to us and, anyone who is interested, and if folks have the report available, they can review it and then.
Yeah, well, they'd be reading it at the same time as getting it.
No, I'm agreeing with you that if,
Do it in 2 stages.
right, 2 stages, so he presents, and then the following meeting, everybody's had time to absorb, what was discussed, and then, vote then. This is a new territory for me, so I know you guys have been, working on this much longer.
is that going to put us 2 meetings away? Is that going to put us into July?
So I believe it will, so today, no, it's, the 15th and the 29th would be the 2 meetings out.
I don't know if we'll have a change of board here, but we've all been through the windmill, so. That's my only,
Right.
Well, you can schedule the meeting, we can discuss that through the chair, through Janet, can't we? On what we want,
In
how we
terms
want
of
to schedule.
scheduling?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, we can schedule.
Yeah, if you wanna think about it,
Yeah.
you can let me know.
Maybe scheduling, yeah, scheduling is fine, as long as no decisions or anything.
Yeah.
We can schedule through you, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so why don't I email Gordon, see what his time capabilities are, I'll let you know what he says at the meeting, and then we can plan the vote portion accordingly.
Yeah, because he had that pretty,
Well, the meeting plan.
yeah, because he sent a pretty detailed email about the information, and that's all public record too, so that's fine. If anybody wants to look at that, if they're watching this on TV or see it come up that there's gonna be a report done, and we have preliminary stuff we can give to anybody that wants to look at it, or what was new, what was discussed. That's my only thing. Is there anything else? Beaches starting Memorial Day here? Beaches open up officially, what, 2 weeks? 2 weeks?
So we received the letter from the state indicating what the sampling requirements are, and that we need to have a pre-opening sampling round done, where the results come back below allowable limits. So it was my intention to contact the lab who is conducting both the sampling and the analysis for us this year. Was my intention and goal to contact them today, and of course, way late on a variety of things. So I hope to catch up with GNL and see what the sampling schedule is and get us
In the mix.
officially in the mix.
Pools starting to open up and everything?
Yep, pools are starting to open up. We've been permitting them and inspecting them, the next round in about a week.
Yep.
So all the pools should be open in a couple of weeks.
So a lot of
Based on
stuff.
next
Farmers
level.
market, does that open up again?
Farmers market's opening soon. Summer camp preparation has begun, so we permit those.
And how about that Mediterranean taking place week?
He's open.
Yep, they opened on Friday.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep,
Oh.
so we did a pre-opening inspection on Thursday. I think he finalized his business in front of the planning board as well on Thursday night. So I think they officially opened on Friday. I know they were open for the weekend.
Good for them.
So, yeah.
Good for
and
them.
the-
Wish
and
them
the-
luck.
They were doing really
Yeah, the
well.
feedback seems to be very positive already, so
Really well.
we wish them well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, as with any business in Scituate, wish them luck.
You know, they've worked really hard to get open
Nice
and do what they need to do.
Awesome. Anything else?
And I saw one of the POs that Graham was starting to pick up on Walter.
Yes.
Oh, Scott.
So Graham Waste, yeah, they made a deal that, are we paying for that, or is she getting billed for that?
A grant is paying for
Paying for that.
waste.
And what is that, once a week?
Once,
Once a week, and that was a 3-month contract.
Right.
13 weeks,
13
officially, so
weeks.
pretty close.
All right. Make a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn. Sweet.